Hi, I'm Eric. I'm the host of Talking with Famous People, and I'm here tonight, this morning, this very early morning, to say good morning. Welcome to a new day. The sun will be up in a little while, the birds will start chirping, your mom will get off of my junk. Um, all the usual things that happen in the morning. Conscious, unconscious know things. What does that mean? Well, I thought I'd talk a little bit about examples of conscious and unconscious knowing, and how, at least in this example, the consciousness and unconsciousness is equal, would seem to be. One, okay, well, one way of understanding consciousness and unconsciousness is not the way I usually understand it, but nevertheless, it's something I. But let me just get down to the point, I guess, before I just bother giving you all this disclaimer. The point is, I come up with a good example of both, for both me and Rachel, of essentially thinking we're using our conscious function. No, I'm sorry, thinking we're using our unconscious function when we're actually using our conscious knowledge function. Now, Rachel has knowledge functions 1, 8. I have knowledge functions 4, 5. So the thing about this is, these examples that I'll present to you shortly, but what they would tend to suggest, of course, as soon as I started live streaming, I felt the poop coming up. What they would suggest is that there's at least some aspect of conscious, unconscious, or I guess that's the only distinction you could possibly reference as being the distinction informed about by these examples would be conscious, unconscious. That there are at least some expressions of conscious, unconscious that aren't that don't vary by slot, which would suggest that it's which might suggest that it's a more foundational level division. It might suggest additionally that we need to be more precise in our distinctions than just conscious or unconscious. So, in other words, it's a real can of worms, okay? But regardless, it's very interesting to note. So, here's an example of me thinking I'm using NI when I was actually using SI. So, like, the song, that I wrote in which I said, yeah, you guys both have years invested that's not a reason to stay around. And I genuinely believe this song was a story about two characters having nothing to do with my own experience, etc. But in fact, really, I was commenting very heavily on my own experience, namely, I was describing my relationship. But those were not the stories I was telling when I wrote that song. The stories I was telling in my relationship, I remembered clearly and contradicted the story I was telling in that song. Yet clearly, in retrospect, that song was telling me, get the fuck out of this horrible relationship. So, like, this morning, Rachel was concerned because she had gotten up very early the last couple of days. And she says, oh, why am I getting up so early? Oh, look at this Chinese medicine thing. And it's going to tell me getting up at 5 a.m. means either frustration or grief. So I'm going to try to figure out what I feel grief or frustration about. Well, the thing is, of course, her FI is a lot more recognizable to her than her SI, which is 8 slot. So this makes perfectly good sense, right? Like, well, she wonders why she's getting up so early at 5 a.m. rather than just allowing her body to make that determination. She doesn't trust her body when it comes to sleep at all. But really, she should just, if she gets up then and feels awake, then she should just get up then, you know? And as long as she just persists in the same basic regimen, medication and stuff, then she'll get tired. You know, we've been pretty sedentary and not been doing a lot. You only get so much rest before you just are like, okay, I'm done resting now. And Rachel and I certainly do plenty of resting. We have been, although I think, you know, we're kind of coming out of that a bit as we emerge into a post-self-soothing world, you know. But regardless, that's not the point. What I was saying before, that was the point. The point was that SI and NI, well, in those two examples, you have equivalent examples. And one in which I think I'm using my intuition, but I'm really talking about my own experience. The other, where she thinks she's knowing her own experience when she's really just using her intuition. The only piece of experience she knew really was that she woke up at 5 a.m. She said, like earlier and later in the day, I'm still tired. She says this sometimes, but I don't really think she knows what that means exactly. She just has, like, instead of trusting her body at all to tell her when she's tired, how tired she is, etc., she has, you know, standard kind of Standard kind of now. My train of thought is not great right now. It's like I have a very long day driving to LA and back. And besides that, yeah, I took some Adderall earlier, but that was quite a while ago. And I didn't particularly want to do this today, but I ended up caving and took a half a clump. And I really need to just like stop taking those things for like a couple of weeks to make sure I totally have it out of my system and I don't get addicted to them or whatever. Because, yeah, that's very possible. You can get addicted to those things, apparently. I know, right? What's up with that? Addiction? You mean like actually addicted? Well, I don't want that. I didn't ask for any addictions. Except my addiction to good humor. I've always asked for that. And I wonder where... Is Rachel sleeping downstairs or upstairs? Because I went and poked my head in there before, but I didn't actually really hear her breathing. Let me see. Alright, cool. That's the problem when you put the fan on auto instead of on. I don't hear anything in there. I think she must be upstairs. I mean, I've seen her since I've gotten home, but I think she was sleeping downstairs and then she must have gone upstairs. Because normally I can hear her breathe when she's sleeping. Okay, she's downstairs. I guess she's just breathing very quietly. Anyway, I just wanted to see where she was. So, makes me want to, Oh, right, I'm live streaming. I forgot. I started reading this article about Caleb Williams. I totally forgot I was live streaming. I'm obviously pretty tired. I've had a very long day. I'm on a small amount of a couple different things, Adderall, a gabapentin, Klonopin, which is pretty juicy in its own way, but probably isn't maximizing my continuity very well. I feel kind of intellectually disheveled, I guess you might say. Yeah, I said it, intellectually disheveled. So, anyhow, this probably isn't going to be a super long live stream. I want to chat a little bit. I wanted to share my thoughts, which I already shared. Well, I took amphetamines quite some time ago, like 8 o'clock ish. So that's, you're looking at 8 hours ago at this point. So, and that I took it at the end of a long day and then drove back here. And so I'm pretty scattered at this point. Definitely going to want to get some sleep before I take any more Adderall. And I don't have a lot of oomph left in the Adderall I'm on, given the fact that I was already tired and at the end of a long day when I took it. So there are those factors, among many, many, many others, all of them equally rich and fulfilling. I believe that was Adolf Hitler. If we're playing Name That Famous Dictator, I believe the answer is, as I indicated, the big A hit. Dolphy, as they call him. Hitler was so bad. He was like literally like the Adolf Hitler of Adolf Hitlers. Well, should be noted, Jeremiah Fix, that same famous dictator also fed rations to his troops. That doesn't mean it's bad to eat food. Important to remember those kind of things sometimes. I was thinking in the car for a stretch of the drive tonight about how, I guess you might say, complicated. Not complicated. How hard to pin down fallacies really are by and large. Like, if you're talking about something that's got a structural fallacy, such as um, affirming the consequent, denying the antecedent, those kind of like syllogistic fallacies. There are other structural fallacies, um, like a gambler's fallacy is a structural fallacy, but the structure of it really is the situation in which it gets applied more than the reasoning itself, exactly. Because in independent trials, of course, the gambler's fallacy is not a fallacy. The notion that something gets progressively more likely to happen next as you pull cards from the deck is correct. So, anyway, those are two examples of ones that you can pin down that have a clear structural identity and there's no good way to do that, right? Like, it's always a fallacy to commit a gambler's fallacy, provided you meet the standards set of by the definition, namely to assume past instances influence future outcomes in independent trials. But if it's not in an independent trial, then it's not a fallacy, right? So the mechanics of it lie on that side of the equation, of that one. The mechanics of affirming the consequent fallacy work the other way around. It's like you don't have to know anything about the specifics. You could just have it be X, Y, and Z with no words except for the quantifier, the conditional, shit like that, right? Your connective terms. And it's always fallacious. You don't need any more context. And then there's other kinds of fallacies that it's a lot harder to pin down their exact form and the exact context in which a given fallacy Boy, money. You're asking a high level question there. Is it possible to prove typology contrapositively by projecting all attentional styles as the correct paradigm, thus revealing that it could not be true given the uniform negation presented? Falliatio is never a fallacy, Grunt Core. That's one thing we know. I guess I don't completely understand your question. So we say, okay, well, let's posit that all attentional styles, an individual projecting all attentional styles is the most correct paradigm, but correct according to what criterion? You mean like prescriptively correct? Like to have the most oh, I see. That it would be the most advantageous stratagem towards attaining the prime directive. Therefore, if it were possible, it would happen, kind of a thing. That's what you're saying, huh? That's very clever and smart of you. You're a very clever, smart man. You should take over figuring this out from me. Did I get it right in just what you were getting at? Did I figure it out eventually what you were trying to say? I mean, I'm not saying you were trying to say. What you, I'm sure, said very clearly in some terms that I don't necessarily know exactly what they mean. So, you know. Because I think that's a good notion to say, look, one one reason we can conclude that there have to be distinct, if you concede the axiom of the prime directive, then if we conclude that the prime directive is right, then we will see every possible stratagem towards attaining it that has that meets the criterion of a successful approach, I guess. I don't know why that would necessarily be the case. Um, you'd be best served to just say, look, if it were possible to have more than one configuration, then that would definitely be attained because that would make you more optimally capable of attaining the prime directive. But if it's definitionally, aka logically impossible, then obviously that's not a successful way to uphold the prime directive. Imagine a 3D vector space for every arrow pointing left, for example, there's an arrow pointing right. If we sum all the arrows and the resulting sum is zero, then we prove no magnitude pointing in some absolute direction. Okay, gotcha. Or at least you prove a multiplicity of individual vectors going in various directions that don't actually relate to one another, so there's no reason to sum them out to anything. I mean, you could just prove that each of them has independent magnitude pointing in various directions, and the resulting sum might happen to be zero, but there's no real reason. It's just incidental if each of the vectors is independent of the other. Instead of having no magnitude pointing in any specific direction, you got multiple magnitudes pointing in every possible direction. But well, what good does it do us to point out that to establish that, let's say, there's no imbalance, right? I think what you're saying is like, can we measure in some concrete way the inverse proportionality implicit to the the prioritization of some functions over others, right? So addressing the question then of like establishing something that nets out to zero in some sense. Well, you have to take a chunk of time, like 24 hours, and somehow meaningfully attribute seconds and minutes to time spent paying attention and way meow meow or meow. And that would just be one way to measure an attentional priority is time spent on it. Another way to measure it would be whether it's treated as an instrumental or absolute value. In that regard, there's not any units you're going to measure it in, really, exactly. It's just going to be a binary status. Well, I mean, you can't have a valid affirmation and an equally valid negation without disposing of all clash, right? So they may both validate prior to engaging one another, but once they engage one another, one cancels out the other depending on which is actually valid. If the negation is truly on point, it can't be valid concurrent with the affirmation. It has to contradict it. I'm sure you understand something that I don't understand. Some math stuff probably that I don't get. I don't doubt that there's plenty of what you're getting at here, and I'm just not understanding it. You seem like a very smart fellow. I'm always eager to hand off any kind of intellectual work to any INTP who might be hanging around. Here's the problem. Guess what INTPs don't like very much? Having any kind of work delegated to them. Even if it were paid work. Rather than Eric saying, can't you figure all this stuff out, INTP? That would really save me a lot of time and effort. But anyway, did you guys all hear my example of SI and NI? So it's like about how me and Rachel both thought we were using one, but we're actually using the other thing. Did you hear us hear my example of that? I'm gonna tell you. Here's my example. If you didn't hear it, I did say it earlier, but I'm not sure who was here yet. I said a lot of it right at the very beginning, so I'm really not sure who was here. I was pooing at the time. So what do I have to tell you? Oh yes, my example. My example song. Say in Japan. There was a song I wrote when I was with Kimberly called Big Problem. And it says in it, yeah, you guys both have lots invested. That's not a reason to stay around. I believed at the time that this song was an NI endeavor. It was not about me at all. It ran directly contrary to the stories I was telling, which I believed still had at that point faith in my stories successfully shaping reality. Boy, was that notion quickly, where was I quickly disabused of that notion? I was. Well, it took actually quite a long time to be disabused of that notion. But anyway, that works when two people love each other and want the best for each other and don't want to fight and don't want to be mad, Anyway, so There's an example of me writing a song, believing it was not about me, it's about a couple of characters that had nothing to do with me, and writing that lyric when in retrospect it was clearly me commenting on my own experience and my own situation and exactly what I should do in contradiction to the conscious NE stories I was telling. I mean, the NE stories I was telling comprised my conscious SI, right, of the matter. So when I did NI, that attempt to do NI ended up just expressing as commentary on my own personal experience. I tried to do NI, ended up doing SI. Well, Rachel's example is she got up at 5 o'clock in the morning, 2 days in a row, wanted to find out why, looked at Chinese medicine, which told her that it's because you get up at 5 in the morning, it means you're frustrated or grieving. Which, so what she thought she was doing was learning something from her experience that she got up at 5 in the morning. What she really was doing is crazy intuition, totally unrelated to her experience. Just to this one little thing that, like, yes, she got up at 5 in the morning 2 days in a row. But you've got to be really disconnected with your body to be asking questions of Chinese medicine of why did I get up at 5 a.m. 2 days in a row? Because you weren't tired then. You woke up because you had had enough rest. She gets plenty of rest in general. The fact that on certain occasions, maybe her medication doesn't work as well as she would like it to. But it happened twice in a row. She doesn't really feel, I think, well, at least she doesn't, she's not what you call assertive. She's a 9. And not super confident, you know. She and I were both damaged a lot in our last, not necessarily most recent to this one, but in recent relationships prior to this one, After listening to Rachel's live stream earlier, I was thinking more in the car about just how much Kimberly damaged me. I said in the car to myself out loud, I said, I have lots of insecurities, and they're all about sex. She really did a number on me. And obviously, Rachel was abused as well. So, PPD people do a lot of damage, Toxic people do a lot of damage. And you never have each other. I know. And normally, that's where we always are, is not thinking about these past things. But seems pretty clear to me that Rachel probably has some processing she needs to do, you know? And I probably have a little bit as well. Of course, when you're dealing with somebody when you're dealing with something like a previous BPD relationship, what you're processing isn't so much the previous partner as all the shit you let them do to you, you know? Whether you fought back or not, I fought hard all the time by the end, but it's like she keeps wounding me. Well, I'm going to fight back without fighting dirty. I'm going to win with justice and righteousness. She keeps fighting dirty, and she's wounding you in the polar, your FI. Those wounds sometimes might take you many years to figure out that you have them, what they are, what they mean, etc. FI6 has better understanding of the emotionality of it, but SI8 has less, blessedly less, you know, intrusive memory of it, I think. And not that I have intrusive memory of the Kimberly stuff. I didn't really think about it much, like the scope of how she hurt me until really tonight, I guess. I don't think that Rachel spent a lot of time thinking about it either. I think it's more natural for her not to think about it because of the A/SI. But yeah, I mean, there's no disputing that we have each other, and I don't mean to undervalue that in any way. But it's also something, you know, it's like these things that came up today. The things neither of us have been processing for 4 years or so. We're both in this weird kind of waking up phase, you know. It's a strange thing to have happen to you, right? Like, I always knew that someday I'd inherit something. I wasn't sure what or how much exactly. I could have figured out some numbers of what my dad's wealth was, but I just never spent any time thinking about, you know, life after my parents' death because it seemed morbid and wrong and ugly to me. So actually having the ontological space, which is to say the financial means and the physical space, you know, having multiple rooms. It's like getting used to things like, why are you putting all of your things in one room, Eric? Why do you continue to do that? Why don't you set up a music room in one of the rooms? Oh, maybe we need to keep those for guests. Guests can sleep in a music room. You know, can take the bed out. You know, um, it is. I've had times before when I was rolling, and plenty of times when I was broke, but I never had money. You know, and it's taken me until like last month, the month before a little bit maybe, but last month really to even have any kind of like real plan for how to deal with money on a month to month basis. I just I just had never had enough money to think about those kind of questions. Like, okay, well, what do you do if you're not gonna run out of money after this little spend thing? Well, then you stop thinking about a lot of things. You start thinking about a lot of things differently. Like, your focus shifts from what can I do with this now that I have money to how can I save this? I already know what I want to do and buy, and it's not very much. And there's little satisfaction in buying stuff for sure. A little to none for me. Rachel, I think, takes a soothing kind of satisfaction from it, but I think she too is getting to a spot where she needs to self-soothe less. We both are, and it's only natural in that time period as well to begin processing stuff that we just couldn't, wouldn't, or didn't emotionally deal with. Because, when bullets are flying, you put your back burner stuff on hold. You don't got time for that. You got enough emotional burden in the present, right? To be worrying about the past. And then when you're like in the short term immediate aftermath of being freed up from the normal kind of bullets flying, you just think, well, it's way too soon to think it's peacetime. Let's just keep operating as though it were a war. And your normal pattern of self-soothing behaviors, persists, at least for a while, goes through the roof in some ways, Um, and I don't think Rachel and I, either of us really have, not that it's particularly relevant to her, I don't think, not as relevant as it is to me, but we don't necessarily have an equilibrium to refer back to that's a clear guide to how life should be. We've never been with the right partner before. And Rachel's an absolute delight and also so wounded and vulnerable. And I'm also quite wounded and vulnerable. But the reason we're such a good pairing is because I think we both care a lot about making the other person feel safe, Meow. Or you want me to let you in? Okay. Well, where are my glasses? Oh, they're right here. Look at that. Invest my money in quantum and AI. Well, most of it's already invested. There's a meeting my daughter and I will have, sometime around the end of the year about whether we should redirect some of those investments to other areas. It's not the sort of thing that I feel super confident about. Right, but you don't want that. Nobody does. Who wants a couple of other people in their perfectly happy house of two? The cats are annoying enough. Not you, Capio, of course not. You didn't hear that, did you? There's my Capio, walking her beauty walk, with a beautiful face and a beautiful talk. Like, it was, I guess, movingly revelatory to see when I got home how like, Rachel was very concerned about me being upset about her live stream or something. Oh yeah, I've already watched it, man. Like pretty much right away when I got home, I was required to watch it. He doesn't request when it's his phone. He requires. Okay. You're affording him much too much, like respectful engagement with others. Like Ross and I got into bed, or 2 nights ago, I guess now. And I kind of reached, so I thought I knew where he was and reached for him, but I was off a little bit because I touched him in the wrong spot and immediately got scratched. He didn't get me too bad, but he was not having it. All right. To be honest, it wasn't immediate. I touched him once, and I thought I had identified, okay, that's his meow. And I touched him where I thought was safe after that, and that's when he scratched me. So he gave me one touch, let me get away with one touch, but he wasn't going to let me get away with the second one. Whether it's because the first touch was in an acceptable spot, whether it's because it woke him up and he didn't have time to scratch me, I'm not sure. It was dark. That's why I was groping around for trouble rather than doing the smart thing and turning the light on. And why? Why didn't I turn the light on? Out of consideration for trouble. And look what it got me. Scratched. By the very cat I was trying to be considerate to. Depends on the cat, JB. We've got one ISTJ cat and one ENFJ cat. Now, obviously, I cannot meaningfully defend my typing of the cats as such. It's intuition based on a few factors, but that's my intuition based on a few factors. And it does seem to me that cats do have personalities. It's very clear that Capia is an independent woman, SI, Dom, and FI third, in my opinion. She's very clean, very meticulous about licking herself, very self-sufficient across the board, and rarely speaks. Get an occasional meow out of her. Trouble, on the other hand, he is very FE, extremely. I was actually thinking of investing in Kitty Starlink, which is a program where they send kitties into space as satellites. And all the signals they beam down are just nothing but space meows. They're fine, don't worry. Someone goes up there and feeds them twice a day. Puts more air in their little kitty spacesuits. Kitty Starlink, I call it. Some people say, Eric, you're just copying Elon Musk. I say, Elon Musk doesn't send cats into space. Space Meows is a pretty good band. It's not terrible. Is that a math pun, Grant Core? You need to send them to space to test their Cartesian theories. Okay. I have to do it. I have to give you a wonder point. I'm sorry. You're just going to have to accept it for your math pun. Just for the sheer audaciousness of making a math pun. It's like, what do? Teach 9th grade algebra? I think Grunt Core, I could picture you as 9th grade algebra teacher in the daytime, Grunt Core lead singer at night. I think you secretly revealed your profession to us. I should say accidentally revealed your profession to us. Okay, fine. Or we'll have them compete at a totally unrelated thing. Like, I don't know, volleyball. What do you think? MMA, even better. MMA. Yeah, I'd like to start a elementary MMA program here at your school. Oh, don't worry. We're gonna tell the kids not to use any of the potentially life-threatening techniques that we teach, except under our strictest supervision. You know what? This sounds dangerous. I'm going to have my kid play football instead. You know what Tommy looks like he needs? More concussions. Yeah. I don't think I've ever really heard of a actual competition debate round coming to blows, but that would be the thing to say if you were going to throw the first punch. Or if your opponent's like, and my opponents, because of this voter I've just articulated, cannot possibly win this debate. Debate this, motherfucker! Pow! That would definitely cost you the ballot. That would get you disqualified from the tournament for sure. Probably suspended or banned from debate competitions, I guess. But I don't know. I don't think it's really ever happened. You'd think it would almost, with these kids getting into heated arguments and around, but they recognize it for what it is, a sport. Most competition sports that get heated sometimes come to blows. Take, for example, hockey. Occasionally, hockey players lose their cool a little bit, forget about their important professional duty to play hockey, and try to throw a punch at somebody. It's true. Well, I wouldn't doubt. I'm sure there is a rule somewhere in the NSDA rule book that says you know physical violence is absolutely prohibited in all instances and will result in I'm sure there's some general kind of like boilerplate rules like that, but I don't know what the specifics are. I mean, it's not like they should be prepared in the sense that they should have security guards on hand. If you've ever been to a debate tournament, a bunch of suit clad boys and the equivalent of a suit for a girl clad girls, all trying to be very polite to the judges at least. Um, and most of them have been doing it. The first time you do it, you're scared. You don't know what's gonna happen. You're worried, like embarrassing yourself, getting your ass kicked, whatever. And after you've done it a couple times, well, you got used to the norm. You win some rounds, you lose some rounds. You're mad at some opponents. You're not mad at some opponents. I feel this one big piece of shame for not adequately prepping my team before the final round. This one tournament, one time, and I feel ashamed. Intrusive memories. How could I let that happen? My kids had one. I know exactly how I let it happen. My kids had steamrolled through all prelims and all the out rounds, had gone undefeated without even coming close to losing a ballot. It was very clear they were just steamrolling. And I got complacent. I thought, one more, I've been prepping them. Whatever. I mean, it's like, yeah, it's the final round, but what am I going to tell them different exactly? Well, what I should have done, I'm tired. I'm going to go lay down in the car. What I should have done is fucking scouted the other team properly. You know, I didn't have to scout on myself. Just some other team, kid on my team, give me your flows from that round so I can see what they're running. And just prepped them out against it. I'm sure that's what they did. Like their coach, I know exactly what happened, why we lost that round. Their coach um, prepped our app out exactly, won the toss, went neg. I still feel like I let them down. I got outcoached. It didn't happen very often. Fucking Eric. Friday the 13th. Yes, it is. It is Friday the 13th. In Canada, all days are met with the same bland emotion. What are your thoughts on unharmonious, disagreeable traits in INFJs? I mean, I don't really think there are a lot of visibly unharmonious or disagreeable traits in INFJs, unless you have some sort of toxic influence, which you'll end up displaying ultimately. Um, I mean, in their natural state of being, INFJs are not disharmonious or unharmonious or disagreeable at all. If you like, there might be things that a given person doesn't like about them. You know, they're not big on SEing for other people. They're they have a poor ability to gauge their own physical limits. So they'll go and be perfectly happy and in a great mood, and then all of a sudden they'll go over an edge of like, okay, I'm completely done. Oh, once boundaries are crossed. Well, I mean, like anyone whose boundaries are crossed, you're going to get some kind of negative response from them. INFJ, it's much more likely to be vindictiveness or hurtful words. Um, for a short period of time and then potentially cutting the person off. Probably not explicitly, like just ceasing to engage them, not responding with or responding with little things like I'm busy right now, can I get back to you? And then not getting back to them, things like that. That's my guess. There's nothing disagreeable about Rachel to me. That's because I'm on her side. I'm genuinely on her side. I want her to be happy above other things. JB, I'm not going to disagree with you there. I do have plenty of experience with both at math and an INFJ. That INFJ not being Rachel, but and I can attest to the fact that it doesn't necessarily go that well. Not that it really goes that great for probably anybody, but it goes worse for some people than for others. Yeah. Some have posited that the aforementioned already once in this live stream, famous dictator, one Adolfo Hitler, that he might have been an INFJ on math. God is good, Jesus, I love you, sup. Not much. What's up with you? I must say, God is good, Jesus, I love you. I much prefer Jesus, I love you to Jesus loves you. And Jesus loves you is not untrue. But it's like, here, let me tell you something. Whereas Jesus, I love you, is not telling me anything, it's telling Jesus something. It's funny. I have so much of an easier time asking God for forgiveness. Hardcore. You're really giggling the wonder point machine here. I have to give you another one. I don't like to be handing them out in punches here, but this is merit based. And that's a very funny statement. Anyway, the point I'm going to make is I find it a lot easier when I pray to thank God for His grace and Jesus and pray for forgiveness and apologize for being a sinner than it is to say, I love you, Jesus. I wonder why that is. Hmm. Well, unfortunately, these wonder points are both homing and burrowing. They're already inside your body, front core. And you can't get them out until you accumulate 1,000, at which point you can convert it to a kilo wonder point. What do teacher and INFJ have in common? Nothing unless the INFJ is a teacher. Do you mean to ask, are INFJs good teachers? Yeah, they can be. But I think they find it exhausting. I think they feel somewhat continually like frauds in that role because, I mean, maybe this is just my projection here because they're using so much NIFE to manage everything. And I guess they have faith in their ability to do it that way. So they don't really worry about like the TE stuff so much. The TE stuff is probably what just exhausts the fuck out of them. It's a lot of TE stuff in the sense that you got to figure out how to work the grade program. You got to figure out why isn't it showing up here like it's supposed to. They usually have somebody on staff who will answer those kind of questions though, so they just epi that as well, you know. So I worked across the hall from an INFJ math teacher who was I think that's what she was. I'm pretty sure. Well, I mean, look, meth itself as your strongest amphetamine, the methylated one, which means a variety of things. It means one thing, but it has a variety of implications, I guess you could say. You should say. Um, I should have said. uh, in general, more, I guess, informative question is going to be which, in which ways can you predictably expect amphetamines to impact a given type? And I don't know. I've not seen examples of all the various types on amphetamines, and I've not paid attention to things related to that particular question before. I mean, I have Rachel occasionally will take a little bit of Adderall or something, and she she just tweaks that on her. It seems she always tweaks that on, like makeup and her little videos that she likes to watch, like tarot videos and stuff. I think those little videos because she watches them on her phone. Of course, they're the same size as any other video. Anyway, well, you can have notes and stuff in front of you and reference lesson plans and do all that kind of stuff if that's your way of dealing with shit. I hated lesson plans. I never even dreamed of making or following lesson plans. It was an insane notion. Obviously, I can keep in my head, well, first I'll do some vocabulary, then I'll do this, then I'll do that. So it's about as much lesson plans as I make, and I just have it in my head. Sometimes I make an agenda and print out for the classes. We're doing Mondays, we're doing Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. So I could not stick to that fucking thing. We'd never, I'd go on to something, because you got to take advantage of, I had to work. David Doss says, I just wanted to thank you for your INTP deep dive video from 5 years ago. It really cemented my view of my own type. Well, that's very nice to hear, David Doss. Thank you for saying so. I had a debater, one of my favorite debaters ever. Whose name was David Dosh. So, anyway, he was cool. He still exists. I shouldn't speak about him in the past tense. I just haven't talked to him in a while. I should call him up, see how he's doing. That'd be nice. Talk to him for a bit. He's a good guy. Who else could I talk to? I could talk to whoever I could talk to. I'd probably talk to Big One as well. What was that kid's name? The Super Beast one. The Super Beast INTP is one of my last beasts. I got him as a 5th grader, same time I got fired from my job. I coached him all the way through 8th grade. I guess he wasn't one of my last beasts. What was his name? Edmund. There were 2 Edmonds. I wouldn't mind talking to either of the Edmonds. They were cool. Big Edmund and Little Edmund. Of course, the ones I want to talk to are the intuitives. Like, I wouldn't mind talking to the Edmonds. I'd love to talk to Dosh. Dosh and I have partied together before and stuff, because he's well out of college now, and those are all NTPs. I wouldn't mind talking to Little Edmund's first partner. What was his name? The INFJ kid. But it's like, I'm not really that interested in talking to Jax, for example, even though Jax was quite a good debater, did very well. I'm not sure what personality type he was, but maybe an ESTJ, a very pleasant ESTJ. I'm not sure. Not really very interested in chatting with him. His family loved me, but wasn't super interested in chatting with him, you know. He owned like a tanning salon or something like that. And a couple of tanning salons, I think. So basically, they made people brown for a living. Any tips for navigating society and intuitive? Well, hmm. I mean, I think all the tips for navigating life as an intuitive, if you're this kind of intuitive, like INFJ, INFP, ENFP, ENFJ, INTJ, maybe, ENFP, maybe, you know, most of the intuitives, but not necessarily all of them, then you're going to be most informed about how to navigate life by fully understanding cognitive functions. Because while there's no need nor reason to employ cognitive functions to explain stuff much of the time, if you do encounter a problem and or something that, well, like for me, it's caused me to reevaluate my relationship with my own failure to the positive. I understand that for better or worse, I'm built this way. It's hard for me to consistently SE anything really. I can uh, under the weight of like a job or something. I go to work every day, do my job every day, you know. But it's really hard for me to execute plans of my own making that are good plans, but I just don't necessarily do that. A bronzage, huh? A place to make people more bronze. No, you can't simulate TE by using TI through the FE lens. You can't simulate it. You could, you can understand it definitionally, better or worse. Like in the live stream earlier tonight, I heard Rachel refer to what's actually an SE issue as a TE issue. I don't remember the exact specifics of it now, but bronze lives matter, silver lives matter more, and gold lives matter most. Just like with metals. Well, I need another beverage, and that's the truth. I ain't gonna lie, girl. I ain't gonna lie, girl. Those are the lyrics to a new song. I haven't really written the melody to it yet, but the lyrics are again, I need another beverage, and that's the truth. I ain't gonna lie, girl. I ain't gonna lie. Racism. Racism about. Yeah, it would have to be racism about. This is a manner of speaking in which you use the Homer Simpson approach to naming musical instruments, like saxophone or violin, tuba maba. These are things that he says in this one episode of something. You can do that to most kinds of words. Racism is a hard one. Since it's got no no hard consonant in it. You can put your maba and you have to go racism maba. But like a word like matter, it would just be mabatur. Mab- Mabatur. If it were immediate, you'd say immediateamaba. You'd say immediateamaba it. A medium ma it. Immediate immediate it. Saxophone. Immediate immediate. Immediate. Like that. Right. Well, at the point in which you begin to find yourself sitting on the porch in the South singing a Negro spiritual, you've probably gone too far. You've allowed your tanning to turn you into a stereotype of your own racist perception, archaic racist perception of a black person. Maybe you become that stereotype. No, you have no more power over it. So darkened has the skin on your body become, while concurrently, so addled has your mind become by this silly activity you're doing. And that's what happens. That's what happens. Someone has pinged your radar. My guess is that you may notice other patterns soonish. It might be purely innocent, but I tend to trust my perceptions. And I'd like to hear about the synchronicity. At Jeremiah Fix. Well, Winston's mom, thanks for writing in. I'm Casey Kasem. And Winston's mom asks, was Tears for Fears the first band to play this song? Good question, Winston's mom. Actually, the song's a cover. The original was written by Bobby Darin in 1962. Next, at number 38, Tears for Fears, Muggity Meow. Everybody wants... What's the Tears for Fears song? I can't even think of one. That wasn't Tears for Fears, was it? Now, Tears for Fears is about exchanging tears for fears. And if so, is it an even exchange rate? Can I exchange one tear for one fear? And also, if so, is it commutative? Can I exchange one fear for one tear? Also, Tears for Fears, could we do bad memories for tears? I'd be willing to cry away a few bad memories if they just leave my head and stop making me feel shame and anxiety. It's like every stupid thing I've ever done that was embarrassing, right? I remember them all. And I feel so embarrassed by them. And they torture me. Intrusive thoughts, they call them. I don't know how many times I have suffered extreme shame shivers over my embarrassing encounter with the neighbors that one time. Embarrassing and unneighborly behavior of mine. It just, it's bad like smallpox. And that's just something recent. But what's even worse than the ones where I feel embarrassed is the ones where I feel guilt. Especially, you know, if not just bad outcomes happen, but I behaved badly and that caused those outcomes. And I can see now how this other person must have been hurt, but I myself didn't understand what I was doing and how its impacts were. That's not very pleasant. That's worse even than remembering embarrassing things. Like this one time, I walked all the way to the school bus with a giant poo on my face. And then I got on the bus. All the kids said, "Ew, poo face, poo face, poo face." I said, "What?" I was like, "Where did this giant turd come from?" Everyone's like, "Now he's got it on his hand, ew." And I threw it on the ground and ran off the bus. Ah! The tears going like this. You can quiet fears and anxiety by moving your eyes left to right. What about but you don't have to move them back to the left to get them back to the left again. You didn't say repeat. Do I have to keep my eyes to the right once I move them there? I do feel a lot less anxious now. I guess my anxiety was there might be something hiding just out of my peripheral vision. I'm now, my anxiety is assuaged. I wonder if that's true. Meow. Mr. Wonderful Kitty. Would you like some company to watch you eat? You want me to watch you eat? Okay, Senior Wonderful Kitty. You're such a wonderful kitty. I feel bad about calling you a narcissist. I think I took that joke a little too far. You're not really a narcissist. You're a wonderful kitty. And Daddy loves you. Yes. You are a bit of a bully. But take a feel. But she's fine and happy. You don't really ever get her. She just like looks at you and is like, man, whatever. Oh, yes. But Daddy looks at you and he says, I love you. I love you. Oh, great, I'm live streaming. getting lost in thought. Like that guy who was in that movie based on that TV show called Lost in Space. Except instead of space, I was lost in thought. I made a short earlier, but I realized I should have made it differently. I should have said, out of order really means in with chaos. Out of in with. Jesus meows a miggity pyow. What are you saying about Jesus now? Jesus says something I can't read because I don't have my glasses. See, Jesus was a benevolent narnar? What's a narnar? Or is it actually narnar? Is it a person from the land of Narn? Or Narnar? Is it, or is it pronounced Nar Nair? So it really wouldn't be spelled that way then. Nar. What do you think about that? Oh, which timeline am I on? I'm the main timeline, right? The unadulterated, pure timeline. Timeline 0. I think I'm leading the way in that timeline. I was voted most likely to represent the timeline at my timeline high school. So it's 5:46, huh? Well, that's pretty early in the morning. You know, if you like things early in the morning. There's no such thing as a benevolent narcissist. It's like saying, a fresh rotten egg. I guess you could have one of those little chicken lays with an egg that's already rotten inside of her. But, like saying, a pregnant post-hysterectomy woman. You can't both be post-hysterectomy, which I think is the thing where they just take out all your uterus and everything. So you don't need any of this stuff. Obviously, you can't have a baby anymore, so you can't get pregnant if you don't have any fallopian tubes. If you just got regular tubes, the non-fallopian kind. Incidentally called Feclosian tubes. So, I guess I'm gonna bail. I'm feeling tired. I might lie down. But I think I want to take a shower regardless. And probably lie down and sleep some. I don't super feel like going to sleep right now, but he's just an important man, Jeremiah thinks. That's why. I thought he was a narcissist. Now I realize, no, he's just too important. He's that important. So he should demand all of our constant obedience. Oh no, Eric's been gaslit. No, I'm serious. He's the leader that we've all been waiting for. Really? So then they're not really a man anymore? Well, that's very assaultive. As though I get to choose my own gender and yours too. That's basically what it boils down to. Look, I'm non binary. I choose this because that's within my power. Now, what happened to you? Okay, you're non-binary too. Yeah, well, I have that power as well. Why don't we both have the same power? I mean, why can't you choose your own gender classification? Because you don't have a penis. Who doesn't have a penis? It's either girls or non-binaries. So you're gonna have to choose either a girl or a non-binary. Well, that's a nice trick of rhetoric there, you filthy fuck. You're not willing to adhere to that definition. Like, so therefore we can agree that everybody who does have a penis must be a man. Or must be binary. Could be a woman, but must be binary. No. That argument is not what they want to hear you say. They want to hear you go, but, or, well, that makes sense. I've had my penis cut off in many car accidents, and I never, ever, 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 ever stopped being a woman. Well, non-binary versus binary is a binary, but binary refers to a specific binary, man, woman, and non-binary refers to the notion that instead of it being on off, that we should treat it as a spectrum, even though it's the most inherently and biologically on off thing we have. That's, whatevs to the whatevs people, and it doesn't necessarily mean just because it's it's biologically wired into us doesn't mean that our personal stories have to adhere to our biological sex regarding our own sexual identity. But I don't care how much you self identify as a woman. In my personal opinion, it's an unwise idea to get surgery to try to change yourself physically in such a drastic way to such an important thing as your junk. Just leave it alone. Just in general, cosmetic surgery is bad, bad. Don't get it. I don't have it. You shouldn't either. Occasionally, if it's certain circumstances, it might be a good idea to get it, but I don't think that, I don't know. I don't have any good reasons to really tell anybody else what to do or not do with their body. But if asked to give advice about it, even if I were to consult with a person at great length, I think I would still think, well, I mean, it sounds like you really want to do this and you're really set on it. You've been thinking about it for a long time, but I would still advise against it. Do you really want to lose the capacity even to just rub one out? Like a normal person does? Just my thoughts on racism? I think racism is bad. It's like you shouldn't hate people because they one race or another. That's what I think about racism. Next, nuclear war. Nuclear war is bad. Well, I spent a lot of time articulating this whole how my manifesto, not a lot of time, but sometime in this previous lecture, my manifesto called The Answer to Racism, or Why Racism? Here's how to solve it forever. Something like that. My point being, of course, simple as this. The Prime Directive tells us people need a map so that they can compare their map against the territory. Experience tells us people encounter lots of other people in their lives in general. So they don't know all the people they encounter in their lives, and increasingly, they know fewer of the total people encountered in their lives. So they're trying to make judgments about strangers walking around, people they may know for a brief period of time, but beyond just like one engagement, maybe just one engagement. And they want to know about this person, have a map about this person, and have their expectations regarding that person be proven true by that person. Because that's fundamentally the prime directive, is to close the gap between map and reality. Whether they want the map to be updated and be corrected, or whether they want reality to be like their map, that's going to depend on their personality type somewhat. In fact, almost entirely. But the point is, what cognitive functions do is it actually gives people a way to put people in a box that's correct. All bad examples of groupism are examples of people putting people in boxes that are both not correct, and ontologically assaultive. In other words, we can't know anything about you just based on your race, nothing meaningful. We can't know anything meaningful about you based on your gender, nothing that we can, hold as definitive anyway, except, basic biological physicalities. There's a few things you can know based just on the fact that, well, this candidate for me as a woman, well, she has a vagina, and boobs. But unless you're cast in porn movies, that's not very relevant. So the point being, the most natural group thing, and the one that has actually the least groupist hate to it across the board, is the groupism about men and women. Jokes about women, jokes about men and the differences between them and stuff like that. Those are broadly accepted and enjoyed by people, Like this lady comic, I talked about her joke before, but I'll reference it again, where she's like, I was dating this guy, and he said, if you break up with me, I'm gonna break your pretty face. And I said, you think I'm pretty? It's a joke about chicks, right? It's a joke about dudes too, I suppose, but that guy wasn't supposed to represent dudes in general, It would first have to prove that there's a race at all besides human. Traits of skull shapes. Well, one of them is they have something to do with your hat size. Mine is a regular shaped head. Some people have more of a square head. You need to get a square inside part for their hat accordingly. Obs. I don't mean to be too obs about it, but obs, you know. Really? Well, you guys are aware, right, that race doesn't actually exist. It's just made up nonsense to justify rights violations. I mean, what it is people using the wrong box because they don't have the right box. Cognitive functions provides the right box, which means both. If they're going to hate a group of people, they're going to hate the group of people they actually hate. Like, some people hate ENTPs. They might know that. They must just, I freaking hate those people. Every time I encounter them, I can't stand them. At least then, you're hating fairly, right? You're hating white people, black people, Mexicans, Indian, every kind of race, every kind of gender, every age, people in wheelchairs, people who can walk normally, everybody, right? You're a random sampling of everybody. And you can articulate actual reasons why you hate them. I can't stand those guys and girls. They're also and non-binaries. I can't stand those guys and girls and non-binaries. Because they're so smug and think they're so smart and muggity muggity meow, right? It's kind of funny because this whole notion of non-binariness is like, of course, trans women don't want to be called non-binary. They want to be called women. So the thing you're saying about getting your penis cut off in a car crash, unfortunately, your car crashed into a cigar cutting truck. A truck carrying cigar cutters, box of them. They all came flying at you concurrently. You happened to be in the middle of changing pants while driving down the road. So your schlong was out, you know. And unfortunately, as you crashed, it flopped up right as a cigar chopper came here. Then the impact caused the airbag to blow and chop. And there it went. Anyway, you are now non-binary. If you use that standard, then all trans women are non-binary instead of women. But that's the problem with dumb people is, well, let's just say, differently functioned people than me. Is they don't seem to really care about or think about whether if I apply your reasoning to this other thing, then doesn't it turn out exactly the opposite of how you want? And I go, well, that's different. Well, no, it's not different. So therefore, you should use the same reasoning in both instances. You can't just be like, penis chopped off equals non-binary when I want it to be, and it equals woman when I want it to be, and I won't provide you any operationalized approach to using this term so that you can use it at all. That's just really offensive. But you know, there are things in life that offend people. That's one of them. Some of the people who get offended include me. I'm one of them. So, getting offended, getting blended. Even one tiny speck of TI polar is too much polar for any and every theory. Anytime I hear TI polar saying, I have a theory, I'm going to respond with, go play Monopoly. I'll say, go play Cards Against Humanity. Oh, that sounds fun. It doesn't, but go play it. I don't want to hear your so-called theory. I get it, they're using the term colloquially. They're not using it colloquially at all. What they have in mind is no thing that should ever touch the word theory. Or to have a restraining order keeping it a minimum of 500 miles away from the word theory. It's quite a few miles, Lost in thought while eating cheese. It happens. Well, a variety of things call themselves postmodernism, but if you look at, say, Foucault, as a, I guess you say, classic dictionary picture example of postmodernism, you would say it's ENFP garbage. Well, I do have my Gemini in my Mars's moon, in my fourth house of Saturn's second moon, which I believe two of them are rising. The previous moon I had spoken of was they're not wrong. The carrying is the FI. Okay? But FE is mirrored with FI for a reason. The stronger the FE, the more powerful the FI on the unconscious side. So it's like Rachel's somebody who definitely feels for other people, cares a lot if she witnesses any kind of injustice, gets mad at people who she thinks are behaving badly, etc. And that's FI. And then she questions whether it's okay for her to get mad because that might make people not like her and stuff like that. That's FE. But to call it manipulation only is to use a pretty loaded term unnecessarily. It's not manipulation. It's the management of the dynamic social system, which requires a person to take the subjective feelings of others and convert them into an object of analysis of some sort they can know about and then engage in further interfacing. So, in that regard, what it is social interface logic. It's a lot better term than manipulation. It's seeking solutions from your relationships and from other people rather than figuring out solutions on your own. You can't really understand FE except as the alternative to TE, the other way to figure out how to get something solved. If you need to figure out how to, I entered this thing in this farm like 4 times and it won't go through, and I don't know what I'm doing wrong. Well, if you try to figure it out yourself, then you're defaulting in situations that require TE to TEing yourself. If you've got TE above, if you got any T above F, you probably do that. So I default to TEing. I always try to figure it out myself before I ask people. Well, not always. Like, there are certain things I know I can't possibly figure out. Like, I didn't know what was wrong with the dryer when it stopped getting hot. I Googled it. I figured it out that way by watching other people. That's sort of the middle ground of FE and TE. It's in that instance, it was, I knew I had to learn things ahead of time before I started getting at it. I was not going to be able to figure it out by looking at it or something like that. So I used to do a lot more mistakes where I think I can figure things out by looking at it and take it apart and then not know how to put it back together. And anyway, TE is very much all about anticipating the necessary order of operations and possible problems while he's projecting his own frame of reference. He hasn't gotten where I've gotten. It's understandable that he's doing so. He won't get where I'm getting until he understands my full explanation. He may or may not have watched me. A lot of people who make cognitive function stuff don't seem to feel the need to do any real exploration of the existing content available in the field, etc. It might be ESTP, it might be ENTP, might be ESFP. I mean, if he's young, that sounds like it could be third slot FE, but it's certainly not inconsistent with sixth slot FE. Yeah, I've heard. He's on my list of things to do, is Typology. I'm not sure if I'm going to get that this upcoming day, or I might not. But he is on my top list of people to pull over. I've heard from different people. I think he's an ENTP, and I think he's not an ENTP. So I don't know what to think, obviously. I'll have to watch it and find out. All right, cool. We will. Maybe we will do it this upcoming day. We got a couple of videos planned for after I get a little bit of sleep. I need to get a lot of sleep, but just 2 or 3 hours would help some. I probably don't even need a full 4 because I haven't been up for that long, just one night. Anyway, okay, so I'm going to wrap it up, take a shower, and make sure I get a few hours of sleep. Good night. Good luck. I love you. Don't forget to eat plenty of bees, and don't eat any of their honey. That's for the larvae.